Hey, how's it going? It's Keith Townsend from the CTOadvisor.com, and you're watching day two coverage at AWS reInvent. I think you'll see a theme here. It's all about data. 50,000 plus people on the ground here at reInvent, and consistently, as I've talked to folks on the ground, my interviews have all been about the importance of data, whether it's blockchain, data migration, multi-cloud. It's about data. I'm joined with a good supporter of the CTO Advisor in this sponsored video, Mike Palmer, Chief Product Officer at Druva. You're new to Druva, just a few months?
Just coming up on 1 month, in fact.
Wow, just 1 month. So we get to ask you the hard questions.
You do.
Because, you've been there a whole month, and the speed at which stuff is happening in this segment of the market, there's basically no probation period. You got to hit the ground running and offer value right away. So we're going to, I think, challenge you off the bat and say, you know what is it that you're seeing trend wise in the industry? What's the big, why the big numbers? We're seeing $100 million investments, $90 million investments, unicorns. What's the big driver? What's fueling this segment of the market?
Well, I think one of the primary things fueling the investment strategies is the fact that the models for protecting data are diversifying. If you go back 10 or 15 years, you can find a fairly consolidated market. You had 3 or 4 big players. They more or less split the market globally. And from that point, it diversified significantly. It diversified first because we started to see the rise of some new personas, as we say in the business. VMware being, and the VMware admin being the first among those. You saw some companies really ride growth on the back of that user. The new users, of course, are coming around public cloud. That is the biggest trend in the technology space, both for small, medium, and large enterprise. And that public cloud solution needs to be different than the ones that were built 20 and 30 years ago. At the same time, we've got 2 other trends that are super meaningful. One of them is compliance and privacy. People want to know where their data is and how it's being treated, and the law is starting to reflect that, and that's challenging some enterprises. And then you have analytics. So while on the one hand, having less data creates less risk, having more data creates more opportunity through better use of machine learning techniques or just analytics in general. So there's a lot to do with data out there in the market today.
So I attended a Cloud Field Day event a few months back where Druva presented, and the team did a really good job of painting the picture of why Druva is one of, if not the only, one of the only true pure cloud solutions. Mm-hmm. When you look at the model and how you guys go about protecting data, there's a lot to like. Mm-hmm. One of which is that one of our concerns in the enterprise is egress charges for when you need to back up data and restore data. However, one of the things that I've looked at Druva traditionally, and this is something that I'd like to get your insight on, is that, I've been at companies that use Druva as an endpoint product for backing up laptops. It is a seamless solution. Talk to me about the relevance of Druva and the pivot for Druva and the expansion. Probably the better question is the expansion of Druva from that endpoint protection company into a enterprise data protection company.
And I think it's a good point that the foundation there was with the traditional sort of laptop and endpoint device service. However, moving in both to servers and then more importantly into native workloads that are built inside of Amazon is where the future growth is. And again, it's where a lot of legacy companies are going to struggle because their heritage is sort of defending their install bases in the traditional sort of data center with a traditional operating system and client server workloads. So for Druva, the opportunity, first of all, as we've looked at our everyone from the SMB through the large enterprise, at being what I like to call kind of the N+1, or in some cases the N+2 style solution, which services the cloud architect, which services the user that is responsible for migrating data into the cloud, as many enterprises start their journey that way. Druva comes in with a native solution to offer not just the ability to get data there, but the ability to be, as you mentioned, predictable with your costs And then, of course, enable that data to be used for other Amazon services like analytics. So this is where companies have traditionally taken their legacy providers, they renew them for the legacy workloads, and as those workloads modernize, they choose a separate provider for the specific need. And we're seeing that once again as cloud comes around. Druva is serving that need.
So there's hints to a lot of like technical things that organizations want to do. Mm-hmm. One of which is this concept of multi-cloud. So I can have my data in AWS. We're obviously here at AWS. I can have my data in private cloud, on VMware vSphere or Hyper-V or whatever the solution. Then I can have my data. Then I can make that data available and portable to another platform such as Google Compute. Like I have to do some machine learning or analytics data, some machine learning on data sets I already have, or Microsoft Azure or Azure, however they want to pronounce it today. How does Druva enable that abstraction of data? Like practically, if I want to back up my data sets that I have in my data center, and I want to move that to AWS, and at some point I want to move that again to Azure, how does Druva help with that practical problem?
Well, first we start with the knowledge that the data is there. And this is where a lot of companies struggle in the first place, is having what's called a metadata index of the data that's present in this storage. And in many cases, in particular with the value that Amazon brings into the public storage and computing market, is the creation of these tiers, which offer differentiated value when it comes to performance and cost. For many enterprises, that's really hard to keep track of over time. What data is sitting at what tier? What data made it from my premises to the cloud in the first place? Who's been using that data? Access controls continue to be one of the most important topics for many customers when it comes to utilizing data in the cloud. So let's start with just visibility. Do we understand in a single pane of glass what data I own? Who's touching that data? What tier is it sitting at? And how can I get access to it? That's the first problem we're solving. Now, keep in mind that, again, when we're looking at building a native solution in the cloud, we're talking about native file systems. We're talking about scalability and elasticity in terms of the actual compute and storage power. So the ability to get access to that data through an API, for example, and the ability to then move it to a different workload solution for processing is another critical requirement if you're going to call yourself a public cloud native solution. Druva enables that as well. Now they can enable that, and we can enable that both in terms of the AWS cloud, but of course you can export that data to another cloud as well, again keeping track of what data is in the metadata index and where is it residing.
So I've heard a lot of similarities between you and some of the competitors. One of the things that is common is this concept of metadata and knowing where your data is located, who's accessing the data. Obviously, by extension, you get additional applications such as e-discovery, lifecycle management,
legal hold.
Those are natural advantages of taking a metadata first approach to data. I hear that from additional companies. Why is Druva uniquely positioned to answer that challenge, or what does challenges in especially metadata, because I think metadata is probably the most important aspect of data protection and data management. Why is Druva uniquely positioned to against its competitors to enable metadata capabilities?
I have always found it fascinating that data creates data itself, but this concept of using metadata. So what I think again is critical, and you started down this path, I'm going to finish the path for you. When we were talking about data protection 3, 5, and 10 years ago, we were talking about RTO and RPO.
Yes.
And that was the primary function that software was supposed to deliver for us. And then, of course, you had different storage that you could leverage for cost and performance purposes. One of the things that Druva has discovered, and I think that sets us apart from anybody in the industry, is the fact that data protection in the cloud isn't defining itself in the same way. So if I'm sitting on premises and I've got a data protection solution, that's great for my recovery purposes, but if I have to do legal hold, or if I have to do e-discovery, or if I have to do search across that data set, often I have to buy yet another product. Archive was always a separate solution to backup, for example. E-discovery is a separate container on premises. As we start to look in the cloud, and because we're building these file systems natively, because we have scalable compute available to us, we can converge these solutions into a single new definition for data protection in the cloud. So no longer do you have a silo of e-discovery or a silo of a pool of data to recover from. It's now just data. The data can be recovered for point-in-time recovery purposes in the classic model, but it could also be used for e-discovery. You could also separate out for legal hold. You could also use it for analytics. And this is a key change as we evolve again from the old client-server data protection market into the new public cloud one.
So last question, we're at AWS reInvent. You know, we there's this, you know, separation of ops guys and code junkies, or code jockeys is the term. If you're a code jockey and you're looking at, you realize, you know, I need data protection. What's the barrier of entry for Druva versus competitors to consume Druva as a cloud service like I would do any other marketplace action in AWS versus the competitors? Like, do I need to hire a backup admin to administer Druva's cloud solution? What's the relationship with you and developers here at AWS? What's the conversation on the show floor?
It's a great question. And again, we have a different model. If you were using a traditional backup product, you'd find a few different barriers to entry. You know, first of all, that you're packaging up millions of lines of code that were intended to be installed on a server in your data center, and you're trying to move that now to a sort of a virtual image or an AMI inside of Amazon. That's costly. It's hard to maintain. It's difficult. What you could carry with you is your administration skills, the things you'd be used to in terms of the interfaces. But from a cost and performance point of view, it would be a terrible idea. Druva offers a very different style model. Not only is the architecture native, but the service is all inclusive. So as you mentioned earlier, while we will install an agent or, for example, as the only Snowball Edge approved and shipped software to help companies do data protection and move data into the cloud, we will have a premises-based capability for you. We'll also fully manage the storage inside the Amazon cloud. You no longer have to worry about capacity management. You don't have to worry about all of the usual administration activities. We are giving you the single pane of glass. We're giving you the ability to do reporting, but we're not adding a lot of the overhead traditionally associated with backup administration. And to your point, the roles are changing.
Right.
And more people don't want to spend their time kind of doing the blocking and tackling of compute and storage management. Where we have a robust community of backup administrators. They're increasingly being challenged to do many other things and don't want to spend their daily activities just trying to keep the blocking and tackling going. We've taken that off their hands. We've then allowed them to expand into new areas, as we mentioned before. And that will continue as we expose this data to the ever-evolving number of Amazon services that they'll be able to take advantage of.
Well, Mike Palmer, Chief Product Officer at Druva. First, congratulations on the role.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck to you and Druva. Thanks for supporting the CTO Advisor. Looking to get more great information from feet on the ground at this massive show that's become, I think, increasingly important, not just to cloud native and cloud first organizations, but organizations looking to solve this hybrid challenge. I think Amazon AWS reInvent is starting to become the hybrid show and not just the cloud show. For more coverage from the show, you can tune in or subscribe to the CTO Advisor channel on YouTube. You can follow me on the web at CTO Advisor, or you can visit the website, thectoadvisor.com. And of course, you can visit and learn more about Druva visiting the website, druva.com, right?
Druva.com.
Talk to you next.